Testing, testing.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We are live.
Thank you. So good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Electoral Area Services Committee meeting of March 16th, 2022. As always, before we begin, I'd like to acknowledge that we're on the ancestral territories of the Coast Salish people. And I'd like to welcome Alternate Director Champ, who's joining us today, Placing Director Acton. So we have a variety of different reports to consider today. So let's get started with the first item on the agenda, please, Ms. Harrison.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The first item on the agenda is a motion to approve the agenda.
Okay, moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Next item, please, Ms. Harrison.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The next item is adoption of the minutes, and item M1. The recommendation before you is that the minutes of the Special Electoral Area Services Committee meeting of March 2nd, 2022 be adopted.
Okay, a mover, moved, seconded. Any additions, changes? All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Next, Ms. Harrison.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Next item is M2, and the recommendation before you is that the minutes of the Electoral Area Services Committee meeting of March 2nd, 2022 be adopted.
Thank you. That's been moved. Seconded. Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Next item, please, Ms. Harrison.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The next item is business arising. There is none. And then public input period. We do have one applicant, Ms. Susan Kaufman, and I can admit her from the lobby if you wish.
Okay, please do. Thank you.
She is in the meeting, Mr. Chair.
Okay, welcome, Ms. Kaufman.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair. Nice to see everybody on a sunny day here. I would like to speak to R4, the Lake Town Ranch application. And I have a few concerns about it, mainly to do with the proposed housing arrangements. The applicant is suggesting to have some attainable and not affordable, but attainable housing units in there with some agreement with Habitat for Humanity. In the application, the applicant suggests that the proposing housing area may experience noise and other nuisances, smell, dust, from the nearby industrial uses, both the proposed cannabis use in the industrial lots to the north in Mead Creek Industrial Park and the solid waste management facility, as well as a sawmill and as well as the festival uses. In making this application, they are also requiring relaxation of the physical distance between the facility and the proposed area for the RV park, which is 145 meters, and the physical distance between the facility and the nearest proposed area for residential use is approximately 50 meters. It's my understanding that these distances were put in to protect public health. In reviewing it, I was concerned that with this location, that BC Transit has noted that the density, location, road network, and usage surrounding this development means that any future service to this area will either be unlikely or extremely limited. And it just seems to fly, in contradiction of what we have learned about building communities and building them in appropriate places without the advantage of having transit services and location to services and no road networks or path-safe walkways in place. It just does not seem to be a good fit for what they're proposing, especially in light that anybody who purchases or leases would have to sign a suitable legal agreement to notify potential residential buyers about the potential nuisances. Ryerson University just released a study about the effects of noise on people, both physical and in their mental well-being. It just does not seem like a good fit, and I would hope that the board would take that into consideration.
Thank you, Ms. Coffin. Thank you very much. Perfect timing too, right on 3 minutes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Ms. Harrison, any further public input?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There is none.
Okay, thank you. So the next item, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The next item is Correspondence Item C1. And this is a grant and aid request for Shawnigan Lake, Francis Kelsey Dry Grad. And the recommendation before you is that it be recommended to the board that a grant and aid Electoral Area B, Shawnigan Lake, in the amount of $500 be provided to Francis Kelsey Dry Grad Committee to support the class of 2022 Dry Grad celebrations.
Thank you. We have a mover for that. It's been moved, seconded. Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Next item, please, Ms. Harrison.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Next item is C2, again, a grant and aid request for Area C, Cobble Hill. And the recommendation before you is that it be recommended to the board that a grant and aid Electoral Area C, Cobble Hill, in the amount of $800 be provided to Mill Bay and District Conservation Society to support the operation of the Society's coho salmon conservation projects and enhancements.
Thank you. That's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Director Wilson?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair, for the chance to speak on this one. As you know, a couple of weeks ago, Ken Gray, the president, did give a presentation on this, which pointed out just how important this work is. I've been closely involved with it for the last 3, maybe 4 years, financially and physically, and it has been recognized that this is one of the premier conservation societies and activities throughout Canada. And if anybody wants to throw in some more money towards Mr. Gray's efforts, they would be more than welcome. So, if you've got some money, folks, throw it Ken's way. That would be great. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Director Wilson. Further discussion? On the question, all in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Next item, please, Ms. Harrison.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The next item, C3, is a grant need request for Electoral Area C, Cobble Hill. And the recommendation before you is that it be recommended to the board that a grant need Electoral Area C, Cobble Hill in the amount of $1,000 be provided to the RCM SAR 34 Marine Rescue Society to support the Boat Lift 2022 and Fast Response Craft 2027 replacements.
Thank you. It's been moved. Seconded. Any discussion? Dr. Wilson?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Pretty much the same as before, except that these guys actually preserve life. They have a lot of training to do. They have a lot of expenses to do. They do a pretty darn good job. And with my background in the marine industry, I know just how important they are. So again, anybody wants to throw some money their way, please feel free to do so. Thank you.
Okay, that is noted, Director Wilson. Thank you. Any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. The next item, please, Ms. Harrison.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The next item, C4, is a letter dated February 15th, 2022 from Brian Anderson, Vice President, Strategy and Community Engagement, BC Ferry Services Incorporated, regarding the Thetis Island Community Wharf rehabilitation. And this item is for direction.
Okay, thank you. So, Director Smith?
Thank you. It's nice to receive this letter. I'm just wondering, maybe I see Anne's not here, but I know Brian, Mr. Farquhar, has been involved in this. And can you clarify, what does support a pay-by-use fee structure might look like? And later it says the opportunity to have a meeting, and I was just wondering if a meeting has been set up for a little bit of discussion on this. For me, you know, they're talking about a third-party water taxi, but the customers are actually BC Ferries customers. So those are the people that are actually using the dock going back and forth when the ferry is unable to transport them. So maybe some clarification. Thank you.
Mr. Farquhar?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through to Director Smith. In general terms, language around fee for use is typically applied when, let's say, for mooring at a dock or use of a boat launch, there is a fee for use, and it's applicable to any user. Currently, the CVRD operates a number of wharfs, both in the marine environment and at Shawnigan Lake and Lake Cowichan. There is no fee for use for any of those facilities. Similarly, we do not have a fee for use for boat launches. So if there was interest, desire of the CVRD to move in the direction of looking to collect fees related to use, certainly that could be a direction given to staff, but I think we'd be looking, wanting to get some clarity around, would this be for all of our marine infrastructure in terms of moorage at or docking at docks and wharfs, and or consideration of things like boat launch use, because that has not been something the CVRD has done to date. And secondly, no meeting has been set as of yet. It was important to bring this letter response forward to the committee through the previous direction of the board to make the outreach to BC Ferries. So that meeting has not as yet been set, given we're looking for direction from the committee at this point in time.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Farquhar. So any further questions or comments on this one? Director Smith.
Thank you very much. For follow-up, I'd like to be included in the meeting. I think it's important that the director of the area also attend the meeting, and that would be appreciated. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So this one is for direction. So I see no direction so far. Director Smith, did you?
Just ask Mr. Farquhar if he has any, we've been working on the restoration, the revitalization or rehabilitation of the wharf and seeking funding. Did you have any thoughts on if this is still a good direction, or was there any recommendations that you might think
So,
of?
yeah, Mr. Chair, unfortunately, no, in terms of other than any other opportunities that may arise in the near future that the CBRD would be eligible to apply for grant funding. Unfortunately, as noted in the letter response from BC Ferries, they don't see this sits within their wheelhouse, pun intended, at this point in time, in terms of making a financial contribution other than a pay for service use or pay for use. So no, unfortunately, we haven't seen any other grants announcements as of late that we could otherwise bring forward to the committee and board to consider applying for. So at this point in time, as per the budget going forward for the board's consideration next week, we've identified those funds that are currently available for the project in terms of rehabilitation and consideration of outreach to the taxpayers of Thetis Island in terms of what other opportunities in terms of funds there might be to do additional works there on the wharf that's going to be required.
Okay, thank you. Director Smith, any further comments? Okay, maybe this is for direction. Maybe I'll just ask Mr. Farquhar, if we don't provide direction today, are there any consequences we need to know about?
Mr. Chair, I would say there's no consequences. I think the discussion has given some insight to staff in terms of how we could move forward at this time.
Okay.
At least follow up with BC Ferries. Thank you.
Thank you. Great. Okay, let's move then. Seeing no further discussion to the next item, please, Ms. Harrison.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The next item is an information item. It's the Electoral Area G, Saltair Gulf Islands Advisory Planning Commission minutes of March 7th, 2022.
Okay, that's for information.
Correct.
Okay, Director Smith? No? We're good? All right. Carry on then, Ms. Harrison, to the next item, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The next item is a report from the Development Services Division regarding Red Arrow Brewing Company, located at 5255 Chester Road, liquor license amendment and structural change application regarding capacity increase. The applicant is in the lobby. Would you like me to admit them? That would be
Yes, please.
Lance Stewart.
Lance Stewart.
Mr. Chair, if it's okay with you, I could share the screen. We have a little presentation associated with these next three reports, I think.
Oops. Oh. Sorry, I don't know if that was my internet or... I think I see Mr. Stewart. Welcome.
Hi there. Hello.
Good. Welcome. And I did see Mr. Tibbet pop up a minute ago. Did you have any introductory comments for us?
Mr. Chair, I was just wanting to say that I'm going to try and share my screen. We have a little bit of a PowerPoint presentation here. Just give.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, we can see that now.
Through the chair, I'm the planner that's assigned to this and can provide some introductory comments.
Oh, very good. Okay, welcome then. Ms. Dubita.
That's good enough. Thank you, Chair. So this is a liquor license application amendment to increase the floor area and capacity occupant load for the Red Arrow Brewing Company on the site that's shown on the screen there. And the local government has an option to provide input or opt out, and staff have recommended opting out with the details provided in the staff report. And I can take any questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So any questions for staff? Actually, if we could take down the shared screen, I can see folks. There we go. Yeah, Director Yanni DiNardo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to move the recommendation.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Maybe just before we, I wanted to invite Mr. Stewart. Did you have any comments or any questions?
No, I think I think it was all just a very confusing thing for me, but now I'm starting to get it. Thank you, Jamie. We are in the middle of a development permit, and I know that these documents are hopefully fluid documents because we really need to extend our patio to get some business in this location.
Okay, great. Short and sweet. Any further comments? Seeing none, I will call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Great, thank you. Next item, please, and thank you, Mr. Stewart, for joining us.
Thank you.
Next item, please, Ms. Harrison.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The next item is item R2. It's a report from the Development Services Division regarding application number SA21I04 for 9410 Marble Bay Road, PID 002999405.
Okay, thank you. It looks like we have Ms. Woods with us with the presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, it's me in charge of this one. So this is an application. We received a referral from the Ministry of Transportation for the subdivision of a 5.36 hectare property. The property is within the containment boundary and zoned R2, which allows them to go to a minimum parcel size of 2 hectares if the lots are not serviced by water and sewer. The site is currently used for residential purposes, and that will remain the intended use for both proposed lots. The proposed development, so the applicant, as I said, is proposing a 2-lot subdivision. Proposed lot 1 will be 2.64 hectares, and proposed lot 2 will be 2.72 hectares. The applicant is not able to comply with the 10% frontage.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead, Director Yanni DiNardo.
Excuse me, I'm having a hard time hearing the presenter.
Oh.
Yeah, you're coming in a little.
I can't
faint.
hear it.
Oh, sorry. Let me just see here. I did have some issues with my computer and thought I had them ironed out yesterday. Let me just take a look here with my audio. Sorry.
It actually started out okay and then all of a sudden dropped dramatically.
Oh no. Let's see.
Yeah, I'm not totally sure. I didn't notice any change, and I've had funky internet today too. Maybe it's a different, broader problem.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm hearing it okay. It is doable.
And I'll yell. I'll strain my voice for you guys.
Thank you.
Did you want me to begin again? No? Okay.
Carry on, please.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Okay, so sorry for those of you that can hear me well, and I am now yelling at you. So this application, I'm just going to sum it up. This application is for the recommendation is for a exemption from Section 512 of the Local Government Act. Staff did conduct a site report or a site visit to confirm adequate usable highway frontage, and is in the opinion that this application should be supported. The recommendation is that it be recommended that lots 1 and 2 of proposed subdivision 9110 Marble Bay exempt from the requirement for minimum 10% frontage as stated in Section 512 of the Local Government Act.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Woods. There we go. Does anyone have any questions? Director Kuhn and Director Yanni DiNardo.
I move the recommendation.
It's been moved. Do we have a seconder? Director Morrison, okay. Any further discussion? Okay, Director Yanni DiNardo and then Nicholson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wondered about docks and booms on the waterfront part of the property. I see there's a boathouse and picnic shelter. Is that on the water?
Let me take a look here at this sorry. So the picnic shelter and the boathouse, yes, they are below the 164, I believe. Sorry, just let me take a look at my report here. Yes, so they are below the 164. There will be no further expansion permitted. They have been, I guess, well, as much as can be confirmed to us at this point through the aerial photography, which was attached to the report, that they are pre-existing. They were there in the 1967.
So will they, sorry, a follow-up, will they be able to put up another dock as well then?
Through the chair, so they may be able to, I suppose, if they get the right, what's the word I'm looking for, right requirements from the Mosaic as well as the Ministry, the Water Sustainability Act. They have to get from the province as well. Sorry, the ministry is escaping me right now. Then I suppose they could, in theory, put up another dock on the on this one on each property is what I'm trying to say here.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Director Nicholson?
Thank you. I am concerned about the access, and I will not be supporting this because I see that there is one driveway in that is on the one side well away from the Meads Creek, but the other potential for another driveway to be put in the second lot would be problematic for Meads Creek, so I will not be supporting that.
Okay, thank you. Any further comments? Okay, so I believe this has been moved and seconded. Am I correct, Ms. Harrison? Yes? Okay. So seeing no further, I'd like to call the question. All in favor? Opposed? One opposed. Okay, motion carries. Thank you. So Ms. Harrison, we can now move to the next item, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The next item is item R3, which is the report from the Development Services Division regarding application number RZ21B02 for 4108 Mines Road, PID 009719181, and the applicant, Mr. Ian Carey, is in the room.
Very good. Welcome, Mr. Curry. And we'll go to Ms. Herrera for some remarks about this one.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, so this item is a rezoning application, file number RZ21B02 for the property located at 4108 Mines Road in Electoral Area B. And the purpose of the rezoning is to facilitate a future subdivision, and I'll briefly go through the application. So the subject property is shown on the screen. The area is 23.5 hectares or 58 acres, if you will. Mines Road is also a gravel road where it branches off. And the owners are currently in the process of building a home on the property in the southern portion of the lot. There are water courses and a wetland on the property, as well as a regenerating forest, as the applicant indicated that the property was logged in the early 2000s. There's a hydro transmission line passing through the property, and it's also located within the Coke Silo watershed. Next slide. So this slide shows the OCP land use and the ALR. This is split into two designations, renewable resource forestry and renewable resource agriculture. And of course, the ALR portion aligns with the agricultural designation. Next slide. So just quickly, the zoning map aligns with the OCP. The property is split zoned into F1 primary forestry and A1 primary agriculture. Next slide. So the future subdivision that's proposed with this application is to divide the property along the ALR boundary. And so that little red line is slightly off. It was lined up before, but that happens with PowerPoint. So, anyway, that's just right. If you can see my mouse, it is, or so you probably can't see mine. I'm not sharing it. But anyway, the red line is just slightly off. Thanks, Mike. Okay, so the current minimum parcel sizes of the F1 and the A1 zones do not allow for subdivision to occur. And the proposed rezoning is to change the zoning from F1 and A1 to the F2 and A2 zones, which have smaller lot sizes and would allow for some subdivision to occur. Staff is not supportive of this rezoning applications for several reasons, which were outlined in the report, generally relating to the property being within a complex watershed area, the proposed subdivision, the proposed zoning providing further development potential requiring the use of restrictive covenants, which in effect do the job of zoning, and due to existing OCP objectives that would not be met. So last slide. So staff is recommending to deny this application. However, should the committee wish to further this application through the process, option 2 contains an alternate resolution, including the requirement for the restrictive covenant that was mentioned. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Herrera. So any questions from Ms. Herrera before we turn to Mr. Curry? I think I saw Director Nicholson and then Wilson.
That's fine, I can wait.
Okay, Director Wilson.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. And one of the things that I fully agree with the protection of the watersheds. I think we're all pretty. Everybody knows that that's one of my main considerations. But one of the things that really bothers me about the applications which are coming forward, and I know that the staff have done a very good job on this. They've done their homework. They've done everything they can. Is the mixture of MOCP mention and OCP, current OCP mention. We're in that flux area, and one of my applications, one of the applications in my residential area is caught in the same catch-22 trap. Which one are we going to go to? We've got one that is current and in force. We've got one which is changing. And the same thing here. I mean, it says here, the OCP modernization process may also raise the issues of ALL lines. And then later on, it mentions the current OCP. Folks, we've got to make up my mind which way we're going to go with this, because we've got a mixture and neither of which seems to apply. And it's very, very concerning. So I'm just wondering what the staff, I will get to a question, I promise. I'm just wondering what do we do about this? Because everybody's caught in catch-22 right now. Thank you.
Sarah?
Yeah, I guess the only comment I have on that, just briefly, the reason the MOCP, I guess, was mentioned in this particular application was mainly because of the fact that agricultural land within the ALR now cannot be removed from the ALR by an individual, and it has to come from an organization. And the appropriate time to consider something like that would be through an OCP process. So I didn't want to confuse the issue of the old designations and the new designations, because certainly when the application was submitted, it was submitted at a time when the previous OCP applied. The previous OCP and the HOCP, the current one, are really similar in terms of the designations with forestry and agriculture. So I don't myself, I'm not very, I don't feel any confusion between the OCPs.
Okay, thank you. Okay, no further questions for staff. I'll turn to Mr. Curry. Would you like to add anything?
Sorry, is that working?
Yeah, we can hear you now. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. If you're okay with it, I'll just say a quick couple words, if that's okay.
Yeah, please do. Thank you.
Thank you. So the short version is my wife and I were fortunate enough to be able to buy this property to raise our family on, and with property becoming more and more scarce in the valley, we'd like to afford another family an opportunity to buy an acreage with it there on that 9 acres. We are not farmers. We don't pretend to be, and particularly with most of the OCPs we read, as well as the unified one discussing the importance of food security and supporting local agriculture, we thought this would enable that land to be used for it. Approximately 20% of it is under high voltage transmission lines. So in terms of future subdevelopment, most families are not partial to living under those, so it would make that very challenging. as well as most of it is kept as scrub because hydro is already maintaining and pruning it as is, so there would not be much further deforestation of it there if they were to use it in full agriculture. The last point with it in terms of that is the concern over another well or dwelling on it. But in its current zoning, we are actually able to do that since it's over the required 10 hectares for that, for a second single-family dwelling. So we don't feel it would substantially change that in allowing this to go through. Thank you so much for your time.
Okay, thank you very much. So any questions for Mr. Curry? Or general comments of any kind? Oh, Director Nicholson, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I'd like to move the staff recommendation, and I'll speak to it if I have a seconder.
Do we have a second for that? It's moved and seconded. Okay, go ahead, Director Nicholson.
Thank you very much. First of all, I'd like to say thank you to Ms. Herrera for the thoughtful report. As you know, we have serious issues in the Coxsila watershed, and every well counts at this point. So that is particularly true in that area, I would say, which is very close to the Coxsila River itself. So there's high connectivity between wells and the river itself. This site has just to speak to Director Wilson's comment about the evolution of OCPs, I think that this is a good example of things that we're trying to fix in the modern OCP. So the reason that this lot exists at all is because of the fact that Mines Road ran through the forestry lot that Island Timberlands had, and of course they flogged it to get good real estate prices, and they got 2 lots out of it in this particular case. So this is how, from my perspective, in our forestry lands, we're starting to see residential sprawl. And I just think the Coxsila watershed in particular is unable to handle it. And I would like to sort of make sure that we're not supporting these until a water sustainability plan for the watershed is in place and we can understand better how much development we can support. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Director Kuhn, please.
Well, it seems water is the main issue, and I wonder solved with storage.
Sorry, Director Kuhn, you have to speak up a little.
Water seems to be the main problem here, and I wonder if storage could help there, or if there's anything that could be.
Okay, I think the question was about storage. Sorry, we couldn't hear you totally, but don't know if anyone wants to respond to that particular. Director Nicholson.
Well, storage is becoming super important for the agricultural enterprises in the Coxsila. It is pretty difficult, if not impossible right now, to actually get a license for a well to use for agricultural purposes. So splitting this piece off to make a little farm probably isn't going to work anyway, because they're just not giving licenses out. Now, if a large storage area is made, you have to store a lot of water for agriculture. And I would also say that clearing the land is becoming increasingly problematic in the Coxsila. So that is, from my perspective, another reason why we should be discouraging continued development.
Follow up, Director Kuhn?
Yes, I wasn't referring to agriculture storage of water. I was wondering about storing water for residents. I don't know if it's possible.
Okay, I don't know if the applicant wants to respond to that one. If you have any comments, go ahead.
No, sorry, we haven't had our dwellings well drilled yet, so I don't have anything to add. Sorry.
Okay, thank you. Director Morrison.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to perhaps pose a question to staff, and that my read of this is that this is a sizable piece of property that there's obviously concerns about aquifer and connectedness to the Coxsila, all legitimate concerns. But my read is that due to the size of the property, there is the ability for an owner to erect another residence and would be able to conduct, farming activities on the lands and non-intensive forestry activities as is now. And yet the question, if you can clarify, is they're looking to subdivide to create that separate fee simple, and that would, in a sense, create the two lots that would then be eligible for additional dwellings and intensification should this move forward. Is that a fair characterization of this?
Ms. Herrera?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I think so. The fact here is, yes, a second dwelling can be constructed on the current F1 property because it is over the 10 hectares. That portion is the larger portion in the zoning. If the lots were subdivided in half, that would probably, or not in half, but along that boundary, ALR boundary, yeah, there is the ability to still use that zone, have an additional home on the new lot. Within the ALR currently, you can have a secondary suite, so all those things start to combine for sure. I think that's what you meant.
Follow up, Director Morrison?
Yeah, thank you. And I think this is one of those challenging ones that deferring to the local knowledge of the directors probably our best move here. I was open to hear what the applicants had to say, and this is a challenging one, and they're dealing with obviously core issues like water supply and long-term health of the region. So with that, I'll perhaps follow Director Nicholson's lead. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Yanni DiNardo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, I just have a comment as well that Director Nicholson has been doing a lot of work on the Coxsila. We sit on the watershed board as well, and our new harmonized OCP and all of the points that were made is something that I think that we should be very concerned about, and I will be voting in favor of the recommendation.
Okay, thank you. Seeing no further, I know this is actually in Area B, and Alternate Director Champ, did you have anything to add? No? Okay. Seeing no further questions, I'd like to call the question, please. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much, and thank you for joining us, Mr. Curry. All right, so the next item, please, Ms. Harrison.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The next item is a report from the Development Services Division regarding application number RZ19I01 for Laketown Ranch and Telego properties. There is a 2.27. There are 7 recommendations listed before you, and I believe there's a presentation as well.
Okay, thank you. So, Ms. Suderman?
Yes, thank you. And I understand that the applicants, Mark Mitchell and Greg Adams, are in the waiting room. So I'm wondering if they could be admitted at this time.
Yeah, Ms. Harrison?
Just a point of clarification. Mark Mitchell is in the lobby?
Yeah, okay. The two of them are sitting together in the same office.
Okay. They've been admitted, Mr. Chair.
Okay, welcome, Mr. Mitchell and Mr. Who was the other one, Mr. Adams?
Yep.
Welcome. Good. Okay, Ms. Suderman.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair and committee members. The purposes of this rezoning proposal at the Laketown Ranch and Teleglobe sites are to repurpose and rezone part of the Teleglobe site for light industrial purposes, including cannabis production, establish a variety of residential uses, as well as an RV amenities on part of the former Teleglobe site and part of the current Laketown Ranch site, and to amend the CD1 zone to distinguish between major music festivals and smaller events that do not use the main stage. The location map that's shown here on the screen shows all 5 parcels owned by Greca Holdings, but only 4 of them are affected, 2 of which are private roads. Mike, I don't know if you can kind of indicate where the private roads are on that, on the screen. Yeah, so the main private road is the one that follows the property line there. Yeah, that is the private UBO road line. And then the other one connects the Teleglobe site south to the F1 zone property in the southeast portion of that subject property. So the private roads take their OCP designations and zoning from the adjacent property. So the focus of this application is really on the 2 main parcels, institutional in the north and comprehensive recreational in the south and the southwest part, which covers the entire western portion of the subject properties. So on this design concept drawing, we can see the area that's currently being used for music festivals, which will stay essentially the same. The proposed industrial area in the north, repurposing the Teleglobe infrastructure, which is currently designated and zoned institutional. The proposed RV resort area, the proposed manufactured homes area, and the proposed cabin area. And I should clarify that the manufactured homes, by that I mean modular homes. I do not mean that they're going to be a manufactured home park. So I need to keep that really clear. So because of the combination of year-round RV resort and year-round residential uses with shared amenities, a new OCP land use designation and a new zone will be required for that particular use. Ultimately, the intent is to transform the 2 main parcels into 4 parcels, which we can see on the diagram. So the part that's currently the music festival area would be Lot A. The part that would be all of the RV resort and the housing would be part Lot B. And then a portion of the current Teleglobe property would be turned into 2 small industrial lots, Lot C and D. The residential component is the biggest change with the introduction of 235 units of small-scale attainable housing onto the property. And it's important to point out that the proposed use for the industrial area is cannabis production. The only proposed change to the zoning for the music festival area is to clarify the definition of music festival and to account for various other uses of the site which may involve music but not be music festivals. For example, weddings or car shows frequently provide music for the entertainment of guests, but are not music festivals where the primary purpose is to attend for the music. Different rules for these different uses around music are appropriate because that also clarifies then which events qualify towards the maximum number of days for music festivals. I'd like to respond, if I can take a moment, also to respond to the public input that was received earlier in the meeting regarding the suitability of the location for housing, both in terms of transportation and potential nuisances. So I have been on the site multiple times. I would say that for an active population, the walk into Lake Cowichan is not too far. It's approximately 3 kilometers to walk. So it's more than you want to carry your groceries home from if you're walking, but it's not an undoable amount. And there are plenty of trails all over the property. So it would not be required for a person to walk along the roads to get into the town of Lake Cowichan. The bus service is approximately 1 kilometer away from the housing at this time. And with regard to the potential nuisances, there was a lot of discussion between the applicants and myself in the formulation of a recommendation for committee on this about the different aspects of living on this particular site. The rationale being that we want to minimize the amount of bylaw enforcement complaints that there might be by making it clear through this suitable legal mechanism that people are moving into a place where they are near to industry and they are near to music festivals. And so they may have these kinds of experiences on occasion, the music, the sawmill, the cannabis production, and so on. I think that one of the things that's become very clear in the last number of years is that in order to construct affordable or attainable housing in the region, we do need to be looking at sites that may not be perfect from a certain perspective on residential properties, but there are big advantages to putting housing close to jobs, for example. And the Meads Creek Industrial Park is functionally full, creating new industrial uses to the north, on the northern part of the property, the industrial park on the south side of Yubo Road. These are all areas where there are jobs, and having housing close to jobs is a good idea. Next slide, please, Mike.
Oh, sorry, Ms. Suderman, just while you had that last one up, could you show us where the 3 caretaker residences are going to be?
This is very much a conceptual diagram. So the 3 caretaker residences are not actually shown on this. They would be distributed throughout the site so that they are close to the different parts. There would be probably one in the RV resort area, probably one in the main manufactured home area, and another one perhaps closer to the cabins area.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so to get to Director Wilson's point about, hopping between the modernized OCP, which is up and coming, and the current OCP, I am suggesting that one of the challenges with this particular application is that Laketown Ranch is currently outside of the growth containment boundaries within Area I. These are shown here on the diagram inside the red dotted line. And so even before there was discussions about the modernized OCP, the management team here and I were talking about the possibility of extending the growth containment boundaries. One of the issues with the growth containment boundary in Area I is that it tends to be lakefront dominated. Almost all the parcels that are inside the growth containment boundary are lakefront. And so that makes it virtually impossible, well, in fact, impossible to develop affordable housing in that area. And so by designating land outside, away from the lake shore, but still in a beautiful landscape. I need to make that clear. The ranch is a beautiful place with great views, that it would be important to extend the growth containment boundary to accommodate this application. So if we go to the next slide, then we can see what has been proposed as a growth containment boundary for Area I and how the subject properties fit into that. I think what we would be doing, should the committee direct us to proceed with this, is we would just be anticipating what was already seen as good planning for this area. But it does mean that if we are going this way, that we would need to include a bylaw to modify the growth containment boundary. So if we go to the next slide, then. So what I foresee, should the direction be given to proceed with this application in terms of official community plan amendments, would be we would have a map change to extend the growth containment boundaries in Area I to include the Laketown Ranch and Teleglobe properties. We would also need a couple of map changes to redesignate part of the Teleglobe property as industrial from institutional, and part of the Teleglobe property and part of the current Laketown Ranch property, and put it into a comprehensive development compact lot suburban type of designation from institutional and comprehensive recreational respectively. So those would be the OCP amendments that we'd be proposing. It is a complex application. I'm sure you noticed I did my best. My first draft of that report was 19 pages. I got it down to 12. I hope you understand what was all, because there are these three very different kinds of components to the rezoning application. So there's also quite an extensive list of zoning amendments that would be required, including changing the definition of music festival, adding provisions for minor musical festivals in the CD1 zone itself, add a new CD3 zone that permits up to 232 units of attainable housing, up to 122 units of recreational vehicle camping, together with caretaker housing and amenities. The industrial zone would need to include a notwithstanding clause that would permit commercial cannabis production on the newly designated industrial property while maintaining appropriate separation from nearby residential uses. We'd need to make a change to the definition of community water and sewer system to accommodate the privately owned and managed water and sewer systems that are proposed for this application, similar to what we've done with Lidstech in Area B. And we'd have to change the zoning map to rezone a portion of the Teleglobe property from P2 institutional to I1 industrial 1, and rezone a portion of the Teleglobe property and a portion of the Laketown Ranch property into a new CD3 zone from P2 and CD1. And then, of course, the affected roadway parcels would also take their OCP designations and zoning from the adjacent land uses. In terms of community amenity contributions, the applicants are offering up a contribution of $50,000 to CVRD Parks for upgrades to Little League Park, which is in Area I. They're offering a private community dog park. This is something that the CVRD Parks function is not interested in, but because of the number of people that are already using the property for walking their dogs, and given the festival uses, this seems like a good way to provide an amenity for visitors to the community, as well as local community members who are accessing the site. The applicants have committed to continued access to the existing trails on site by members of the public. And they recently sent me a photograph of Mr. Adams having a conversation with a group of hikers that had just arrived that morning to have a hike on the property or take off on a hike through the region from that property. The affordable housing arrangements for a number of units to be maintained as affordable housing in perpetuity with a housing agreement is another thing. We're talking about up to 9 of those units being that, and the potential for CVRD's recreation department to offer swimming lessons for children and seniors in the heated outdoor pool, which is going to be part of the amenity package for the site and its users. There are a bunch of, so if we can go to the next slide. Yeah, the recommendation is that in the opinion of staff, it's in the public interest to support the application despite having to override the growth management policies of the OCP. The benefits, in my professional opinion, outweigh the negatives. The benefits include the construction of up to 235 units of attainable housing, amenities, both indoor and outdoor, on the site to meet the needs of both residents and members of the traveling public, housing within walking distance of transit, shopping, and other town-based or lake-based amenities, the creation of affordable housing in close proximity to jobs, and the creation of additional industrial lands in close proximity to other industrial lands without additional environmental disturbance. This support, of course, is offered conditionally based on a number of additional factors that would need to be met, such as a mechanism to transfer all servicing arrangements, water and wastewater, to the CVRD or other local government entity at some point in the future at no cost to the local government that would be assuming that servicing, fulfilling all the conditions from the Lake Cowichan Fire Department regarding upgrades to the firefighting and road systems, as well as strategies for managing fire risk, the receipt of the community amenity contributions, which we've already just discussed, and suitable legal arrangements for notifying potential residential buyers about potential nuisances. So I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Suderman. A large one. You know, I think it's at 2:31. I know we're going to have questions on this. Could we take a 10-minute break now and then we'll come back for all the questions all at once? Okay, see everyone at 2:41, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We are live.
Okay, thank you. Welcome back, everyone. So we will turn first to questions from Ms. Suderman based on her presentation, and we also do have the applicants in the room with us. So I have Director Wilson and then Director Kuhn. Wilson.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chair. I've just finished chomping on a piece of chocolate there, just in time. Thank you for that. One of the things that mentioned there, this is probably a question for the applicants. There was mention of a public open house there and 65 people attended. Can you tell me what the general feelings seemed to? Did you get a feel for what the public in the area thought on this one?
Okay, that's for the applicants then. We'll welcome Mr. Mitchell and Mr. Adams. Can you guys hear me okay? You're a little faint, maybe. Speak loudly.
I'll talk a little bit. Accused of being loud. So if I'm too loud, hold your hand up.
Okay.
I thought overall there was basic consensus. I mean, it was overwhelmingly supportive. They were kind of looking forward to it. And just about all the questions were how much and when they're available.
Okay, good. Good.
And there was quite a few neighbors, like there was lots of people from the area. It wasn't out of town people, it was all mostly locals to the Yubo, Lake Cowichan area.
Good, thank you. And follow up, please, Mr. Chair, if I may. Yeah. And this would be more of a comment more than anything else. One of the things that's been that I'm very pleased, and thank you to Ms. Suderman for all the work she's done on this one. It seems to really have been quite a complex one. One of the things that I'd really like to see here is just one paragraph which says one option is to have the applicant and the CVRD work closely together on the development of the servicing arrangements. Now, I have the utmost faith in the nuts, bolts and expertise that Mr. Dennison and his staff bring as part of the engineering department to any project. They've done wonderful work down here, and I'm sure they'll do the same up there. And I like to see that they are working together. So one question for Mr. Dennison, I've seen he's just popped up there. He's ready and primed. Obviously, there's going to be questions on any form of possible pollution or odor, and I'm talking about pollution underground and in the air there. So is that something that you would seek to minimize or maybe even exclude? I know that's possible, but there you go. Anything that you can comment on that, please, Mr. Dennison?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, through you. What they're proposing, the concept here is trying to keep costs down to make it as affordable as possible. And so we have accepted that idea, but we are working on a covenant that would be registered on property with them that would provide some safeguards in certain ways anyway. So one thing is they can't sell it to anybody else. So they couldn't, put in a low-cost system that would be, the lesser standard that then could be passed off, cheaply to some other private owner that would then, who knows what they would do. So we would have the opportunity to take over the system if they were not operating it anymore. They are proposing quite a simple system, so it's more akin to a collective septic system than anything else. So the reason for that is, again, to keep it as simple as possible. They wouldn't have highly qualified operators or whatever operating it. If the conditions are acceptable, then it could be done well and not present an environmental risk. Just like a septic system for a home, if it's done well, it can serve for many, many years and really be no problem at all and not have any contaminative possibilities. If it's poorly arranged, then that doesn't work very well and there can be problems. We have the right as well in the covenant to review and approve their designs and take a look at the reporting and testing they do on site conditions and that sort of thing to make sure that we're satisfied that it's going to be okay, that we have the right to inspect the work to make sure it's being done to a sufficient standard so that it wouldn't be poorly done at some point in the future when it would be taken over. So there are safeguards of that nature in it, and we are working with them actually on that quite closely, and there's a fair bit of information and discussion back and forth.
Good, that's great.
Yep.
Yeah, and one, if I may indulge me, Mr. Chairman, just one more follow-up.
Oh, sorry, Director Wilson, you've had to, but I see Director or Ms. Suderman has her hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to add to Mr. Dennison's comments that the geotechnical reports that we have for the site indicate that there's a very high permeability of the soil, so very good drainage in the area. So we're not anticipating any problems, for instance, as there are in Area D with clay soils and shales and that sort of thing, which would make a system like this problematic in that part of the region, whereas in this part of the region, because of the particulars of the soil formation and so on, it's actually a very environmentally sensitive.
Yeah, I did see that, but thanks, Ms. Suderman. And yeah, I was just asking the question to make it sure that the public knows about this as well, those who haven't read the reports, perhaps.
Okay, Director Wilson, sorry, could I put you on the bottom now? I've got quite a speakers list. So,
sure, thank you.
We've had two, thank you. So I'll go to Director Kuhn, and then Yanni DiNardo, and then Morrison. Director Kuhn, please.
Yes, I attended the public meeting as well, and I confirmed that the majority of the people attending the meeting were very much in favor of the proposed development. I'm ready to make a motion at this point. I know it's a relatively complicated application. It's very detailed and very well presented by staff. And I think to round up to one of the comments in the staff report, this proposal has many more positive aspects to it than whatever little reservations there might be toward it. So I'm very much in favor of it, and I move in favor of the staff recommendation.
Okay, I was going to ask, this one is so big and complicated. Would you mind, Director Kuhn, if we had a discussion and then came back to you for the recommendation? I think that might work the best. Okay, thank you. So we'll go now to Director Yanni DiNardo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Ms. Suderman, and I'm not sure if she might know this, but is the Yubo Mill site also, is that in the growth containment boundary, and how many homes were going in there?
I would like to defer to my manager, Mike Tippett, who would probably have that information at the tip of his tongue.
Okay, Mr. Tippett.
Hello, thank you, Mr. Chair. Sorry, could you please restate the question?
How many homes would be going in? Is the Yubo Mill site in the growth containment boundary, and how many homes were slated to go in there?
Well, Ms. Suderman pointed out in the original presentation that at this time, under the harmonized OCP, is not in the containment boundary. However, the draft MOCP does propose it to be in the containment boundary. So I don't think the work on the MOCP is sufficiently well advanced to know exactly how many homes might have been proposed in, on that particular site in the event that the MOCP continues to show it in the growth boundary and was actually adopted and talked about specific densities. It would be purely speculative at this point. I hope that answers your question.
Okay, thank you. So I'm looking at this. It was way too overwhelming for me, this whole application. I found it too much, too fast, and I have not been on site, and it would have been more beneficial to be able to actually see this site and to understand. And I also feel that it would be better if we could do that, and the attainable housing and modular housing, as we know in Saltaire, the mobile home park that went in ended up to be modular giant houses in the end. And I have a whole bunch of concerns on many different aspects of this application, and I would really like to be able to have more time to digest and ask more questions privately and see the site. So I have a lot of concerns. I really feel that we've all worked really hard to modernize and harmonize this OCP. And my first draft of looking at this is going backwards. So I really feel this, to me, doesn't feel like modernizing or harmonizing at all. So Unless I can see otherwise, I'd like to see the site. I'd like to understand more. If there's been tours, I understand the director and the APC and a lot of staff have been up there, but none of us have been up there. And this is a huge development that I can't support currently.
Okay, thank you, Director Yanni. So lots of questions. So in round one now, I have Directors Morrison, Nicholson, and Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And don't know if this would be a question through to staff or the applicant. I took great interest in reading the referral comments back and may have some additional comment in a little bit on those, but was curious about the Subasset First Nation. I know that they have been very busy and very active in developing their lands and creating trail systems and the like, and have been, from what I understand, in communication with the applicants here. So is there additional information that in regards to discussions that's been had with the most immediately affected First Nation that beyond what's in the staff report, or perhaps I missed it in the staff report, and perhaps the applicants might comment on their working relationship with them?
Okay, who would like to take that one on the First Nation? Sherman?
Yeah, I can start on that. The First Nation does have, and Mike, I'm wondering if you can pull up the growth containment boundary map. The current growth boundaries, I think, is the more close in. Again, so that we can look at that. Yeah, the colorful one, the one before that, yeah. So on that map, I've shown exactly where the reserve lands are. So my understanding is that the applicant and the First Nation have been in discussions about the potential for trails and so on to connect across. The last time I was out in Yubo, the First Nation has already cleared the site north of Yubo Road. I anticipate that they're moving ahead with their housing plans on that site. So it will be housing within the Area I growth containment boundary, which is immediately adjacent to the town of Lake Cowichan, then the reserve, then the Lake Town Ranch site.
Okay, thank you. And Director Morrison, you had a part two to that?
Yes. Unless the applicants wanted to jump in on the First Nation question.
If I could jump in.
Go ahead.
Aaron and Melanie Hamilton, they have been to all of our events. We have worked and had many meetings and developed a friendship over the years. We have conversed many times that they were looking at doing park models towards the top of their development. Saw that we were proposing the park models, smaller homes that tied more into the RV park we were doing. They went to small houses instead. The trails, joint uses. As COVID hit, we were in the discussions about having a gathering of nations for First Nations at our site. And so we have worked very well, support each other. They are actually sponsors of our events. You know, like I say, so the trails, the crossover between the two of us, we're well aware of what each other is doing, support each other, to the point that I was on their waterfront less than a month ago with Aaron and Melanie, somewhat consulting and helping them because they want to put a small bit of a deck with, call it a trellis kind of roof to it, so that they could have very small events for their neighborhood, nothing large, nothing Sunfest-ish, but so that they could gather 100 or 200 people. So, and we are in discussions with them to help them put on these small events because we're in the entertainment business and they're not. So we we cross over, and I feel that I've got 100% support from them, and they do of me, and we support each other very well.
Thank you. Follow up, Director Morrison.
Yeah, just a note on the concerns that other directors may have around the inclusion in this and a future growth containment boundary. You know, those of us that live and play in the area know that the topographical makeup of a lot of the habitable area of electoral area I is kind of like this, or it's on the lakefront. And those, by their nature, whether they be view properties or waterfront properties, don't generally lend themselves to affordable or attainable housing developments, in that that's you know, a less expensive component of those would be less expensive land, not view land, not waterfront. And you know, just looking at the general topography of electoral area I, there's not that many places that are relatively level, even though this isn't a perfectly level site, but is certainly a lot more buildable and lends itself more to an affordable housing and a residential development opportunity. So I don't view it as a big stretch to say that this would be appropriate to, or wouldn't be appropriate to include as part of the growth containment boundary. And just on that note, I found it quite interesting that the town of Lake Cowichan, and in their perspective, is that you know, this should only go ahead if it's within the town boundaries. But I think that our engineering department and working with the professional planners on staff and the engineers and the applicants can certainly make this a reasonable growth and development area. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Director Nicholson.
Thank you, and thank you to Mark and Greg for coming. I have a quick question that you could refresh my memory. I went out to the public meeting that you held. I don't recall cannabis being part of the proposal at that time. Did I miss something?
Okay, who would like to take that one?
It's always been part of the proposal. I don't think you missed anything. It's always been part of the rezone and part of the package.
That's only for the repurposing of the earth station up top, which is light industrial, but it comes under the CVRDs, and Mike speak to this or Bev, but it's part of the light industrial, which includes a cannabis component to it.
Okay, follow up, Director Nicholson? Not right now, okay. Go to Director Smith.
Thank you. I'm not sure if I have a question for staff, but what I feel about a growth containment boundary is we currently have growth containment boundaries, and it's for the communities under modernization to actually decide where their growth containment boundaries are. We're stepping ahead of the community when we start expanding without their actual looking at where the growth containment boundaries. I thought we were going through modernized official community plans, and now we're just saying, step aside community, we're going to make this decision that this is the part of the growth containment boundary. And I think that's not how we want to be perceived by the communities. Also, I think, so that's my comment. But then when I'm looking at all these little tiny dots on asset 4, those are really tiny little spaces. And I think what's going to occur in here is going to be purchased by people looking for recreational, a second home, that they're going to come to the lake as a second home, and it's not really going to end up being attainable housing. It's going to be somebody else's second home for a season. So I do have concerns about that. And So those are, you know, and the posters look lovely, but if they're that close together, there isn't going to be that lovely tree atmosphere around each of the different types of homes that are going to be in here, whether it's the cabins, whether it's the RV, or the modular homes. So I'm just having concerns that it's just not going to look like what the posters actually were showing. And so maybe there is there more detail on how close everything is going to be together in each of those areas? Maybe Ms. Suderman can answer that.
Ms. Suderman?
Yeah, thank you very much for the question, Director Smith. At this point, the detail is not there. There is a concept which was included with attachment C, I believe, which shows a potential layout for an individual site per unit. And so this is meant to be very close together. At the same time, the applicants have a commitment to maintaining the existing mature vegetation in the area as much as possible. So the full details about all of that would come out should the proposal move ahead to the bylaw stage.
Okay, thank you. So on round one, then I have Director Martman and then myself before we go to round two. Director Martman.
Thank you. I have a question, but that just stimulated a thought about removal or maintaining the vegetation or mature vegetation comment. Because I've been looking at the report on the wildfire hazard assessment. It sort of says the other thing. So interested in your thoughts on how those two play out.
Thank you.
That would be me.
I think so.
Yeah, okay. Thank you for the question. The fire wildfire assessment document and so on also laid out a number of strategies around the fire suppression system that would need to be put into place, and the fire smart cladding on the buildings and so on, as well as trimming up the trees so that you can still have the canopy, but not necessarily the branches closer to the ground. So I think that there is a way to find a balance between the wildfire protection and the protection of trees.
I'll follow up, Director Martman.
Thank you. And I guess it all sort of lends it into my one question that I left unanswered, and that is, where does all the water come from for cannabis production, residential, significant residential use, a commercial enterprise, you know, and I guess for fire mitigation, not mitigation, but fire
suppression.
Suppression. Yes, thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, good questions. The applicants have filed an application for well for the residential uses on the site. The current uses on the site already have their own wells. So the cannabis production facility, because it's a former Teleglobe facility, it has its own well. The music festival has its own well already. So they're waiting for permission on the well for the residential uses. All the indications from the reports that have been done so far are that they have a very substantial well and a substantial water reserve on the property. And the existing firefighting infrastructure on the property has a storage tank, a water storage tank there, which I'm terrible with numbers, but it's some phenomenal number of gallons that it holds of water. So once that would be full, that would be providing both the head for pushing water through a fire suppression system, as well as just the supply of water.
If I could speak to that.
Go ahead.
From a water perspective, First, the recreational component is seasonal. We have the studies all done on that. It's minimal amount of water that you use in an RV park because you don't tend to power wash your RV or wash your cars, etc. when you're camping. The small units are 1 bedroom, 1 bathroom, minimalistic in water in all aspects. We addressed this right from the beginning. We wanted to have the minimal amount of impact on the whole environment with this whole project. Even to the point that if they have small garden beds, they're not gonna have gardens, they have garden beds. They're drought resistant natural plantings around each one of their, and also the fire resistant. Now that sounds silly, but some plants, some trees and bushes don't burn as quickly as others. And that we were going to have 300-gallon water reservoir, which would be tastefully finished. It would look like a little fence around it, but we actually would do rainwater capture for any gardening they wanted to do in the raised beds. So the actual minimalistic amount of water that we're trying to do on the whole complex was part of the design. The other thing is when you hear 350, 120 of them are RVs, and the 230 of them are small. They're 55, 52 square meters. They're 550 feet. That's part of the low impact of this whole attainable housing. It's quality housing, but it's attainable because it's small. You are downsizing, and then you go to the clubhouse, you walk the trails, you enjoy the outdoors, but your actual house is a small apartment. Individual, but they're small apartments. So they don't use a lot of heat, a lot of electricity, they don't use a lot of energy, and they don't use a lot of water. The cannabis component, there's cannabis up there on the 2 properties at the end right now, and they do not use water from site. They truck water in about once every 2 days, and that's documented, and I've watched it for 3 years at the end of the road and 2 years at our parcel. They do not use the on-site water. They use it for flushing toilets up there for their dozen employees at each site, but they do not use the water for growing. They truck it all in. There's something about, it's hard on the, not the plants, but hard on the machinery or something. They have to have some kind of perfect water. So they truck it in. They have their own cistern on site. They fill their cistern about every second day.
Okay, thank you. Is that good for now, Director Martland? Okay, so myself next. So yeah, I just, it's a big complex one. I agree with Director Yanni DiNardo. I feel maybe a bit more confident. I've had a tour of the site just as far as where everything is and how far away the noise and the smell issues might be. But just 2 specific questions, probably for either staff or owner, but the ownership structure then for this. So for the manufacturers' homes and the cabins, is it a lease? Is it a pad rental, or how? Generally, I'm just concerned about security. It's great if it's attainable, but how long can people stay there?
Is that a question for me, directors?
Yes, please.
So the proposed tenure is for individuals to purchase the homes, but the land underneath would be with a long-term lease. So there would be a monthly pad rental fee. That fee would also include the amenities and the taxes and utilities and that sort of thing. So.
Okay, and would it have just month to month? Is that the vision? Is there any length of tenure that's envisioned? Maybe for the owners?
I think maybe the applicants would be in a better position to answer that particular one.
No, the leases are long-term, like 99-year leases, because I don't think it would be marketable, and I don't think it would be reasonable to ask someone to buy, a small home or a cottage and be month to month. They wouldn't put that investment in. So it's been done. It's Aaron and Melanie are doing it right now. 99-year leases down by the waterfront, Souk, First Nation. I mean, it's been done in many areas. So it's not the intent to sell the individual properties underneath. This is a housing project that you can own your house, but you long-term lease and amenities it's basically identical and somewhat copied from Chemainus Gardens, if you're familiar with them. And there's others. So there's a couple up at Long Lake and the lake in Nanaimo. So there's one in Nanaimo that's been doing it for 15 years. There's quite a few on the island that are done this way.
Okay, 99-year lease is the plan. Thank you. The second question I had, so yeah, I'm sort of assuming it's 350 units, so the RV are year-round and they'll be, I'm assuming, occupied. Is there any vision for any other commercial, like a grocery store or something that would allow people to shop and stay in that community without having to travel, like Cowichan?
Sorry, can I clarify first?
Please.
We have the zoning right now for 350 units, RV and park models. And for the purpose of this zoning done 6 years ago, a park model was considered an RV. What we are doing is the RV component is going to be, and it's 122 units, and those are seasonal. We envision snowbirds in the winter and a higher end use in the summer, also as a complement to the entertainment for 2 and 3 and 4 weekends down the hill. They will want to use these RV sites in the summer for a week at a time. So the RV component is seasonal. The remaining of the 350 units we have the current zoning for is to turn those into 50 cabins and 180 approximately park models along the lines of the cabins that Aaron and Melanie are doing down the hill. Ours are going to be smaller than what the houses are doing down the hill on First Nations, and also along the lines of Chemainus Gardens.
Okay.
And if I can just supplement that and say that when Mr. Adams is talking about park models, he's talking about units, modular units that are constructed to the CSA Z240MH standard, which is residential building code equivalent.
Okay, thank you. All right, so I think we'll move to round 2 now. I have Directors Wilson, Kuhn, and Yanni DiNardo.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, from what I've heard so far, I'm not sure that having a site visit, as far as I'm concerned anyway, would achieve anything. I particularly like the fact that the applicants have spoken with First Nations, and they are on board with this. I see they've done a lot of homework on this. I do honestly see this as a pretty good proposal, especially with the involvement of the CBRD engineering department. So I will be voting in favour of approving this one. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Kuhn.
I'm okay, thanks.
Okay, Director Yanni DiNardo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Is there any chance we can refer this back so that we could have more time to discuss this? There is a motion on the floor, but can we refer it?
Okay, I don't think there actually is a motion on the floor, Ms. Harrison.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. No, there is not.
Oh, could I refer this then?
With all due respect, Mr. Chair, Director Kuhn did ask to bring that motion forward, and you asked him to delay that, and he did have seconders ready to vote on that one.
I did, yeah. Ms. Harrison.
Point of clarification, Mr. Chair. Director Kuhn did move it. There was no seconder, and he was asked to delay it.
So I'd like to refer it back until we had a chance to really look at this and digest this very large application that would make a huge difference in that community and also other communities.
Okay, well, I have a lot of hands going up. I'm not quite sure. I did say that I would come back to Director Kuhn, but you've now referred it. So
I wonder if, as you all know, I'm not very much in favor of referring applications back to staff. We've done that too often in the past, and I can't see much of an advantage of that. Is there a way that we could go forward with this application and have a site visit in the meantime, it has to go to public hearing anyway. And then it comes back to the board again. So in order not to delay this application, I would much rather go that way. If there's a mood to go forward, I would like to go forward with this, subject to a site visit. And so then we do the site visit, we do the public hearing, and the last step then is the board meeting, at which time, and that could always happen. It could always happen between an EAS meeting and a board meeting when there's a public hearing in between. There's always a possibility to derail something or whatever. So why delay it at this stage? Why not go forward and the normal process and have a site visit in the meantime? Thank you.
Okay, well, I see Director Yanni DiNardo's. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, I will. I'm still sticking to the referral because I believe that this application, in the 14 years that I've been here, I've never seen such a complicated application, and I need more time to look at it, be on the land, and discuss it more, because I am not comfortable with approving this at the current time. So I just think it's giving more time, and I don't think it would be a whole lot of time. This is something that's really important, and I think we have to take that time.
Thank you. Now, Ms. Harrison, do we need a seconder for a referral motion?
Yes, Mr. Chair, but I understand that Director Smith may have.
Director Smith, you're seconding that? Okay, so on the referral, shall we have just on the comments on the propriety of referral? Okay, I see Director Martman and then Director Smith.
So I'd just like to, thank you, Chair. I'd like to have some clarity on the referral. I'm hearing about having more time to, to digest this, take a look at the property. So are we referring it back to staff for more time, or am I missing something here? Thank you.
Okay, I think Director Yanni DiNardo, just generally due to the complexity, do you give us more time to look at it and answer questions?
Yeah, that's what I thought. I just, I was going over this. We received it on Thursday, and I have quite a few questions, but at the same time, I have a lot of questions because the same time through the weekend, I'm doing the harmonized OCP, the modernized OCP, and I'm seeing all this positive stuff that we're moving forward on. And then I'm looking at this, and I'm like, this is setting us back to the way we were. And I really think that we need to be thinking, well, I'm confused and want to see all of it and ask more questions.
Okay, so Director Martin, does that answer your question? Okay, so I'm not sure if I've lost, tell me if I've got Director Morrison and Smith and Kuhn. Is that, who have I missed? Okay, Director Morrison, were you actually on that list? Go ahead, then.
So I'm a little unclear as to the propriety and the procedure here, because when Director Kuhn made the initial motion, I seconded the motion. Obviously, you didn't acknowledge that. So, when you offered to come back to him, I thought that he was going to be given the first chance to make a motion. So my comments are in regards to the motion and not the propriety of referral. And I think that we should be given that opportunity as directors to, have a full-fledged discussion before this is referred. So I turn to you as chair. Are we limited to our discussion around the propriety of referral, or can we actually discuss some of the salient points of this application, which may ultimately have impact on how people end up voting?
Yeah, thank you. I understand your point, but I've basically made the decision that the propriety of referral, and I think agreeing with the need for more questions before we more questions answered. So I'll move to Director Smith next, please.
Thank you. I support the referral motion. I feel that this is an extremely complex decision that we're being asked to make, and that there's a piece here and a piece there, and this is changing and that's changing. And the slides were very limited. The amount of documents we read was extremely extensive, which was great, but it's still, I don't feel comfortable making a decision today. And I would also like to have a site visit. I think that that helps us put some things into perspective. And I would, when it's referred back to staff, I would like to include a site visit during that time, and possibly a way of somehow correlating a little bit different how this presentation is for us to see where everything is actually changing. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Director Kuhn.
Well, I didn't get my question answered. Procedurally, would it be okay to go ahead with this?
Sorry, Director Kuhn, we can't hear you. Sorry, you're still not, something wrong with your microphone. Maybe turn your video off. Nope, still nothing from Director Kuhn. Okay. Okay, Director Kuhn, sorry, I can't hear you. I'll go to Director Nicholson and then back to you in a moment, see if you can fix that.
I just think Director Kuhn was trying to ask his procedural question, which was, could the site visit not happen at the same time as it moves forward to public hearing?
We can, maybe Ms. Suderman wants to answer that one.
Thank you very much. My understanding of the process would be that should the committee decide to approve the recommended resolution, that that would just set us up to present bylaws to an upcoming board meeting. Certainly there would be no reason to not do a site visit in the interim. Perhaps I could do a better job of explaining the application as well. I'm happy to do so. It is very complex, and I understand those concerns. And it would save time. I think the applicants did apply in 2019, and it's now 2022. So it would be very good if we could figure out how to do the site visit, if that is the primary concern, without necessarily holding up the entire process. And of course, when the presentation of the bylaws comes to the first board meeting, if the site visit and the other kinds of responses to the questions are not adequate, the board still has the complete choice as to whether or not they want to approve it or not at that stage.
Okay, thank you. I assume that would answer Director Kuhn's question. Go ahead, Director Yanni Donato.
I still think that we could, because of the complexity of this, having a site visit, taking our time. I have so many more questions for staff, and I didn't feel that I had enough time for that I don't think it would hold up things that dramatically anyway. So I'm referring it back so that we can have another look at all of this and then move it or not move it, the resolution from staff. But as it currently stands, I need more information, and I would respect my fellow colleagues to support that.
Okay, thank you. I do see I'm getting ready to call the question. I'm going to wait for Director Kuhn, though. I see he's not with us. So in the meantime, Mr. Farquhar.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. With regards to priority referral, it would be good to have some clarity in terms of what the referral is. A referral back to staff normally is because more information is being asked for staff to provide on an application, or there's very specifics being asked of staff on a referral. Is the intention that, or is the intention to refer it to a subsequent meeting? Because as a few of the directors have noted, they wish a bit more time to review the information and have that next meeting or an upcoming meeting to delve into more questions they may or may not have after further review. So staff would appreciate clarity around what the referral is specifically.
Okay, Director Yanni DiNardo.
Well, the referral is to be able to understand all the complexities of this, like, well, the walkability, like where is the services, that type of thing. Like I have concerns that this is going, the sewer, the water, all of it. I can hear that the sewer system is a simple system. Sorry? Oh, Director Morrison's answering his phone at the same time. So I just wanted to, I think that we just need more information, so in depth to understand this complex application. So I don't know what more I can say to staff, what specifically you want to hear from me.
Okay, well, I see Director Mickelson has been trying to join in here.
I support the referral. I am concerned. I was concerned when Lake Town Ranch was originally proposed, however many years ago that was, and because it's a huge change for the community. And as a result, I voted against it. I think I was the only one at the time. And it has been in operation now. Granted, COVID kind of slowed things down, but I think there's enough experience that the community understands now the kind of impacts that Lake Town Ranch has had. And now we're taking, now there's a proposal to do a whole new kind of a whole new sort of project on top of the Lake Town Ranch. And I really feel strongly that we need to check back with the community. My understanding is Area I OCP was relatively out of date at the time that we started down the road with Lake Town Ranch. And I know we haven't checked back with the community since then, except for these one-off public hearings related to applications. And I don't feel very comfortable about that. So when we refer back to staff, I would also like to add not just time to better understand what's being proposed, but I would also like staff to report back to us what could be done from the CVRD to facilitate a community conversation about the general direction that this area is taking, and to do that separately from a public hearing, I think would be helpful.
Okay, just a reminder, we're just on propriety of referral. I don't know, did Director Martman, did you have your hand up? And then I have Director Morrison. I'm glad to see Director Kuhn, you managed to come back on. I was going to hold the vote until you made it.
Yeah, I thank you, Chair, and I struggle right now because I don't know if I should be raising this under a point of order, but I thought I'd raise. This is a procedure. There's a process piece here that I think I'm struggling with, and I do understand the idea of time and all of that, but the process piece I raise, I think this is a point of order, is that a motion was made. There was a visual seconder made, and the chair had decided we'll wait on that because more questions to staff. I think that got jumped through a referral, and I cannot, sit here quietly and say that I'm comfortable with this conversation. I think we'll get where we need to get to, because I think I need more time as well, but I don't see it being referred back to staff for time. I see it moving to maybe the intermediate that Director Kuhn is talking about. Like, we can go ahead and process it. We have time between meetings to do this, but I'm just having a hard time with the process with the point of order I brought up. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Director Martman. Point of order, Ms. Harrison.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to the committee members. Regardless if there was a motion on the floor regarding proceeding, not proceeding, a referral motion is a proprietary motion and supersedes any other motion that's on the floor.
Okay,
so
thank
I hope
you.
that answers the procedural question.
Okay, thank you. So Director Morrison to close.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And yeah, I'm struggling too, because I've been following the rules of procedure for propriety of referral, yet we continue to argue the merits of the original application. I won't support referral because we have time in our system to have this proceed in its normal course of action, and for us to apply questions to staff, to arrange for a site visit. And it's never just one meeting, it's always significantly longer. I've got a very good understanding of the application, and I think that this is an unreasonable delay when we could do the research and get the information, and it could move through our system, which is not quick. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I think we've canvassed all sides of this one, so I'd like to call the question on the referral. All in favor? All in favor? Okay. Opposed? Motion fails. 5 against. Okay. All right. Resuming debate then. Director Kuhn, did you have? I think you were wanting to move recommendation.
Yeah, I move the recommendation, yes.
And it's been seconded. Okay. Any further discussion? Director Nicholson.
I will be voting against this because I feel very strongly the community has not had adequate time to understand what is being proposed and put it in the context of the larger UBO official community plan area or local plan area or whatever you want to call it. Thank you.
Okay, Vianney, DiNardo, Smith, and Kuhn.
I will also be voting against this. I don't feel there was a fair chance of reviewing this application completely, and I do not want to see it move forward until I will not vote for it until I understand all of the aspects of it. Thank you.
Okay, Director Smith.
Thank you. I echo both Director Nicholson and Director Yanni DiNardo. I feel that we're going through a modernized official community plan. That's the opportunity for the community to actually extend their boundary, growth containment boundary. It is not for the directors to extend growth boundaries when we are headed down a direction where that's for the community to decide. And I will be voting against this. Thank you.
Okay, I have Kuhn, then Morrison. Did I miss anyone? Oh, go ahead, Director Kuhn.
First of all, there's going to be a public hearing. The public will have an opportunity to speak up.
Sorry, Director Kuhn. We hear some of what you're saying. Keep your mouth really close to the mic.
That computer.
Well, sorry, you're here. Sorry, Director Kuhn, you're not coming in, but we do know you're supporting the recommendation. Okay. Director Morrison.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just as an indicator of after the resolution, if it's successful, I will be making a subsequent resolution to arrange for a site visit for directors. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, seeing no further hands, I'd like to call the question. All in favor? Opposed? 3 opposed. Motion carries. Okay, Director Morrison.
Move that we ask staff to arrange with the applicants a site visit for the electoral area directors as soon as possible.
We have a seconder. Dr. Wilson. Any discussion? Call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Good, thank you. I think we're at 3:36. Should we have a 10-minute break? See everyone back at 3:46, please. Thank you. Thank you to the applicants for joining us.
Thank you.
Guys.
I did notice the green doggy bag.
I didn't. Where?
I didn't get that.
We're talking about St. Patrick's Day.
Lori, you almost put that application.
Oh, no.
I reckon it's his microphone setting, you know. It must be set on auto or something, because it just winds it all the way back after he started speaking.
So, Ms. Harrison, we're still waiting for the video?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We are live.
Okay, thank you very much. Welcome back, everyone. So we'll now move to the next item on the agenda, please, Ms. Harrison.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The next item is item R5, which is a report from the Water Management Division regarding water systems regulatory and management bylaw, user rates, and volume allotment amendments. There is a small correction to attachment B, which is PDF page 5, for the Burnham water rates for the classification under Group A, the elementary and middle schools. The water use overages should read $10 per cubic meter over 400 cubic meters.
Okay, thank you.
And there is a recommendation. Would you like me to read it?
Yes, please.
Recommendation before you is that it be recommended to the board that CVRD bylaw number 4416, Water Systems Regulatory and Management Amendment Bylaw 2022, as corrected, be forwarded to the board for consideration of 3 readings and adoption.
Great, thank you. So, Mr. Dennison, did you have any intro comments or just?
Mr. Chairman, I'm prepared to go through it if the committee would like me to. Sure. So these are just we're amending our regulatory bylaw, which includes our charges for all of our water utilities. And these amendments are those that have been brought forward through the 2022 budget process. So for Arbutus Ridge Water, we have a $13.70 increase per year to the user fees. And this is following the 2% per annum original agreement that we had with Arbutus Ridge. This is to make also, it makes up, there was a small deficit in 2021, so we do need additional funding to make that up. Similarly, in Burnham water system, there's a little bit larger increase of $50 a year. We had a deficit also there in 2021. We also had problems with water, with the total amount of water in the peak drought period, and we had to haul in water. That would have been a very much larger increase, except for we are getting funding because it was an emergency at the time. We're getting a funding to cover that from the province. But still, there's other related costs, and we need to make up for that deficit. So we've got an increase there. In addition, we've changed our inclined block structure for charges such that for high users, so for 6 months, the normal use, sort of typical normal use is 200 cubic meters. So for those that have passed over 400 cubic meters in the same period, there's a new rate of $10 per cubic meter for each cubic meter used beyond 400, which is a very high rate. However, that's the cost that makes up for the cost of our hauling if we're in that situation again. And we do have a few customers there that use an awful lot of water. And so we're finding that that's quite stressful on the overall system, and it makes it difficult for everybody else, because if we have to haul in water, that adds a lot of expense. So we are proposing to add that to our to that bylaw. And then also in Honeymoon Bay, we have a small increase in user fees to cover the RV trailer parks and campgrounds. And that's to make up, we realize that they're disproportionately undercharged for the service they get. It's a little bit tricky, but in reality, about the first 60% of all the cost to provide a water service is for the first drop, is to just have it, to have potable water that's been properly managed and disinfected and pressurized and provided for and operated at all runs about 60% of the total cost. And then so even if you have an area like an RV park where they're using relatively modest amounts of water, there's still a lot of cost to provide that water at all. And then the second factor for that area is that they also have fire protection. And so, and they have just as much fire protection as anybody else has. And so between those two things, we believe that they're disproportionately charged as it is. So we'd like to incrementally start to increase their rates. And so we've got a small step that way this year and plan to do more in coming years as well. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Great, thank you. Any questions? Directors Nicholson, Morrison, and Wilson, and Smith. Okay.
Thank you. I've got two questions. One is, why are some of these water systems not metered yet?
Mr. Dennison?
That's a very good question. So it is our policy in general to meter all of the systems. We'd like to do that. There's not very many left. Arbutus Ridge is one of them. And there's been indication to us from a number of the customers there that they would really not like to see that. They've made the argument that Arbutus Ridge is a retirement community and that things like gardening and keeping their lawns green is an activity that's good for them and they enjoy. There's some engineers in Arbutus Ridge that also argue that if you look at the records for their aquifer, there isn't an indication at this point that the aquifer is in any trouble in that area. And so they make the argument that for them, that and being a retirement community and not having the stress on the aquifer at this point, that there shouldn't be the metering. But that could be changed, and I think in general it's likely the thing we want to do eventually everywhere, so that we're consistent with all of our services. So it's a good question, and I think that's something that we need to pursue at some point.
Follow up.
My second question is about the annual volume. So many of the systems seem to have an annual volume of 400 cubic meters. And some are higher. And what does this mean?
So through you, Mr. Chairman, so the way almost all of our systems, there's a couple exceptions, but the normative amount of water in a 6-month period is 200 cubic meters. And then we have what's called an inclined block structure above that. So there's a certain charge up to and including 200 cubic meters. And then for the next band of 100 cubic meters in the same time period, the rate per cubic meter steps up. And then for the next batch, the next round of another 100 cubic meters, it steps up even further. And so our inclined block structure is actually very steep as compared to most local governments. And that's to encourage water conservation. Generally, our 200 cubic meters, there's the odd one that has a different rule for various reasons. Woodley Range has very much less, only a quarter of that allotment, because they're very restricted in the water they have available for the community. And even then, we often have to haul water in summertime. And another one, I'm trying to remember which one it was. Another one we took over, and at the time, they had a much higher allotment, and we negotiated with the community to a little bit higher than 200, but it's Douglas Hill. No, I recall that now. It's Douglas Hill, and they've got a little bit more because that was negotiated at the time. Although they are metered, but they had a even higher amount, and so that was what ended up being the negotiated amount.
Thank you. Okay. So
can I follow up?
Well, wait, you've had two. Is clarifying, which I can come back to you if you like.
Well, I just want to clarify. So, if you don't meter like Arbutus Ridge, how do you know what to charge them?
It's a flat rate.
So I think that's a problem if we're trying to encourage conservation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Director Morrison?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and to tag on to Director Nicholson's comments, I was in a watershed strategy workshop yesterday with the province, and it's pretty much universally accepted that if you're on a potable drinking water system and you're not either a commercial or agricultural or industrial user, you should be on a meter, and that's a pretty much accepted standard in our province now, and hopefully we can bring all residential users onto that. But specifically to the Honeymoon Bay water system, and I'll be very careful in how I couch this. These RV parks are, by their nature, and were created under zoning that was of a seasonal nature, and I know that the zones are a little bit different, and different parks have different time frames that people are allowed to occupy them. And I do know that most are adhering to their rules and their zoning, but we have instances where folks are, and not really for affordable housing rationale or anything like that, but they are extending well beyond the 22 weeks, if not full year-round residency. And are we going to be able to, with the water rates, be able to capture some of that additional usage, because we're providing year-round service now, and it's wasn't ever intended to be that way? Do you have any comment on that, Mr. Dennison?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, that's a very good question. There's most of those, they're not separately metered, right? So they're collectively metered. And it gets to be a bit of a tricky question when you have some customers on the same system and paying part of the collective cost that are using only a very tiny amount of water, because they do use it only seasonally and maybe only infrequently seasonally. And then you have others that are now living there full time. And we really don't have a capacity to, tease them apart at all. I think one thing we could do is try to look at the overall demand numbers, and they are low as compared to a single family residence. Even with more people living there full time, it's still the demand is quite small. They don't really have much in the way of yards. They might have some potted plants or something, and in general, not the kinds of uses or service in home services that you see in an ordinary home. So that part isn't extravagant and doesn't put a large demand on the system. But in terms, part of our approach in this is in terms of fairness for what we're charging others too, right? So we're trying to think of that as well. I think it might be worth looking at maybe the records we have over the last few years. I can get a tech to do that and see, whether demand has crept up from what we've understood it to be in the past, and whether maybe higher rates yet are warranted on that basis. So we could look into that.
Okay, thank you. Director Wilson.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Just so my numbers are correct, or if I remember, 1 cubic meter is roughly a ton, Mr. Dennison. And if the normal use then is around about 200 cubic meters per 6 months, it works out to about a ton a day or something like that. And that seems to be about right for instance, I'm pretty certain that, just as a two-person family, we use less than that. But who uses 400 cubic meters every 6 months? That can't be a family type thing. Where are those guys?
Well, Mr. Chairman, so in Burnham, one of them is a grow-op operation, and which is still under the residential zoning and follows the normal rules. So that's a little bit awkward, and we've knocked on the door a few times and encouraged them to diminish their demand. We might want to look at some sort of special designation for that. That's one thing. And then the other thing, there are people who just use a lot of water, especially irrigation. And I don't know if they use it wastefully. Again, it's hard to imagine, the total quantities that some people go through, but we do see in say, Saltaire and a few other larger utilities where there might be bills of $1,000 or more in a summer of extra cost for the water they use for irrigation. And so there's people who use a lot of water, amazing amounts of water.
Yeah, and this is one of the things I'd like to see, obviously, with the metering that's going on and all the rest of it. The more, the better. And one final comment: there are some, and I use the term real engineers, and you know what I mean, on our Budis Ridge who monitor the level of Aquifer 197, which is below there. And luckily, fingers crossed, it keeps going. We are in a good replenishment type of situation, but let's keep it that way. So thank you for all your work, Mr. Dennison.
Welcome.
Thank you. So I have Director Smith and then Martman. Director Smith.
Thank you very much. So I have three items that I'd just like to bring up. One is we appreciate the digital style meters in Saltaire. We know that that really saves the staff from having to crawl in and out of ditches, stick their heads underneath hedges and everything else. And I'd like to just, while we're maybe speaking to the public, is remind people that their meters need to be available for the staff. So if your hedge is growing over top of them, make sure that they can get in there and have a dig around. If you have a break or something, it really helps them. And another thing is I'm just wondering, how does the building department, if somebody builds something, like say they put a secondary suite onto their home, how does that relate over to the building department to change that home from a residential single family dwelling to have that extra billing? Is there a connection in there someplace?
Yes, through you, Mr. Chairman, there is we have a paperwork that normally runs from downstairs to upstairs, and so we get a hold of that, and that goes through the billing and gets approved. Often they check in with us whether we have capacity for, and not all of our systems have capacity necessarily for a secondary suite, if it's very marginal. So yeah, there's procedures for all of that.
So I just have one other comment. I noticed that the Regional District of Nanaimo has if you grow your own vegetables and have your own fruit trees, they have a system for watering that's a little bit different than ours. Have we considered that?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, do you mean a separate way to charge them for that, or to measure it, or I'm not sure what you're referring to?
I think that if you grow your own vegetables and have your own fruit trees, you get a special exemption from some of maybe the overages. I'd have to go and look at their document again. And I was just thinking, as we encourage more people to be more sustainable within their own property, how we're going to go towards that in our modernization, and that maybe your department, and as we look at that, maybe that's something we need to explore a little more.
I'd be delighted to look at it if you send it along.
Thanks.
I think I saw Mr. Etherington briefly pop up. I don't know if he had a comment.
Yeah, through you, Chair. Just further to that, the one thing that we do have is in our watering restrictions, we have no means of enforcing when somebody's using water for growing vegetables or fruit trees and such. So it is in there as an asterisk. So it's not necessarily in regards to the cost of the water, but we definitely don't enforce that when it comes to restrictions.
Okay, great, thank you. So Director Martman.
Thank you, and through Mr. Dennison, I appreciate the report. I just flagged the Shellwood water system, though it's not a usage increase. How are the users informed about this, or is it something that's more of just a housekeeping that they just flew under the radar?
So we normally, it depends on the increase. If it's a modest increase, that's say $30 a year is sort of a typical kind of number, and it kind of depends on what they're being charged now. So we look at the proportional change, and if it's modest, then we don't usually do much in terms of information, and that has been successful. We don't really hear on small increases. especially in water systems these days, in the last decade, 15 years, the awareness, the number of times we've had droughts in the summertime, the awareness of water and its scarcity and value has really changed. And so in general, we don't see the same kinds of concerns about costs that we maybe did, 20 or 25 years ago. If we have a larger increase that we think would be more notable to the customers, then we'll send each customer a letter and we'll explain what the latest is, what's going on, what the concerns are, whether it's for asset management purposes, whether we're just not making enough money to pay for the costs, or whether we needed to, maybe there was a repair or some emergency or that kind of thing. For the people at Shellwood, they've had, a number of troubles over recent years. There's been failures and problems of various sorts. We've had to tell them, that the water's going to be off for a while where we do this repair or that repair, or the truck has been in fixing something, a water main break or something of that nature. So the awareness in that, and it's a pretty tight-knit community, so the awareness there of the issues with their water system with costs is pretty high. Actually, one of the technologists, Lisa Daugeny, and myself went there a few years ago, and we met with the whole community. It's not a large community, so we met in somebody's living room, and we very carefully went through, the sort of, costs and vulnerability of a small system. The small systems have to meet all the rules that any large system, the city of Victoria, has to meet, or anything else. And yet, when they're very small like that, it's very difficult to try and do that economically. And they're, because it's small, any repair that would be a minor thing in a large system can be very expensive for a small number of customers. And Shellwood's only about 30 or so, 32, I think. And so they're very vulnerable to anything that happens there, and they've had some problems lately. So the awareness is quite high. So we weren't planning to, but we'd be pleased to. If you'd like us to do that, we can send them a letter.
Right, follow up, Dr. Martman?
Yeah, I guess it's really about the awareness around water usage, about cutting it in half. And do you think that they would need to know that, or it's I leave it to your department?
Okay, will do.
Okay, great. Thank you. Director Yanni DiNardo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, I think it's to Mr. Etherington. I'm talking about, my question is on restrictions. If you're growing your own food, I didn't quite understand. So in Lambourne, we cannot use any extra water because we're always on water restrictions. But if you're growing your own food and fruit trees, is there some kind of exemption, or? Because I've never known that. So we don't water our lawns, but we actually do all of our vegetable gardening.
Yeah, through the chair. So this year, with the restrictions from last year, we did have quite a few comments in regards to things like that with vegetable gardens and such. So all I'm saying is there is an exemption and there is no enforcement. Not that we really enforce anyways, and we still do encourage the micro drip irrigation and such, but in, say, a stage 3 restriction, irrigation of vegetable gardens and fruit trees and such is an exemption.
Thank you.
And then just one more further thing, in regards to the metering, I think it's important that everybody knows a meter and the installation, it can be anywhere between $1,000 to $1,500 per service. So at Arbutus Ridge, there's almost 700 homes. So that would be $1 million. So just FYI.
That can be a tricky thing, Mr. Chairman, to have to charge them a lot more money to put in a meter to charge them more money. So sometimes that's a bit of a tricky sell.
Follow up, Director Yanni DiNardo.
Yes, thank you. But I think it needs to happen. I mean, this is part of us, again, the modernizing, the harmonizing, the water store, we sit on the watershed board and we talk about all this stuff, but we need to be the leaders in that. So Lambourne came on board with the longer you wait, of course it's more expensive. Now infrastructure is out of this world. But I mean, we bit the bullet and had to happen, and we encouraged that. So I think that it should be everywhere else as well.
Okay, Mr. Dennison.
Sorry, one also to Director Martman's question earlier, about the cutting in half. They weren't actually charged according, or they weren't allowed double the water. That was an error in the bylaw that we caught. We weren't actually acting on it. We didn't realize the error was there until recently. So they're not getting less water than they did before for the same amount. They won't notice the difference on their end. It's just that it was just an error in the bylaw that was somebody caught, and we're correcting. So they won't see any difference.
Great. Okay. Seeing no further, would someone like to move the recommendation? Moved. Seconded. I'd like to call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Dennison. We're on to the next one. Please, Ms. Harrison.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The next item is item R6. It's a report from the Water Management Division regarding a request for temporary water operation services from Cowichan Bay Waterworks District. And the recommendation before you is that it be recommended to the board that agreement with Cowichan Bay Waterworks District to improve temporary operations services for the period of April 1st, 2022 to June 30th, 2022 be approved.
Okay, thank you. Moving it, Director Anna DiNardo?
Yes, thank you.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion, Mr. Dennison? Did you?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. This is interesting, and it brings up another important topic, I think, anyway, for all utilities. So this is a request from Cowichan Bay Waterworks for temporary services that our CVRD operators would do the things that operators are required to do for water systems. Cow Bay Waterworks had discontinued its previous arrangement for their operator for a variety of reasons. It's a pretty complicated situation. But now it finds it's in a bit of a critical gap while it's seeking to find a replacement. And that's the interesting thing, is that it's not very easy to find operators. In fact, it's very challenging. We see that in a variety of ways. Even in our region these days, you see now hiring everywhere. But that sort of thing is particularly acute with certain professions, and utility operators is certainly one of them. There's been a high rate of retirement of operators have been around a long time, and the number of newly trained operators is not that high, and the demands and expectations and rules have been increasing all the time. So it's getting more involved and more effort required and higher standards to meet all the time. So you need more operators to look after the same amount of customers in any sewer or water utility. And so that's getting to be a pretty big crunch. And our colleagues over in Mill Bay Waterworks are certainly seeing that. Just on the question also of capacity, so it's really important to help them out because water is a very critical resource, but we also have to be concerned about our own capacity for our own systems. So in the spring period for a while, Mr. Etherington has looked at this very carefully, and he believes that we're okay to provide this service, but with the clear understanding that that has to cease as of June 30th. We can't go into the summer. Our staff like to have their vacation time, which they've earned, and so there's just no capacity to continue past that June 30th deadline. So just something important to realize, because if they don't get somebody hired, it might be a very difficult situation.
Okay, thank you. Director Nicholson.
Is there any discussion about them wanting to become part of the CVRD as opposed to running their own thing?
Well, Mr. Chairman, that there's been some discussion among some people. I don't know if if the Waterworks and their board has discussed that, or they haven't expressed interest to us so far at this point. So I can't say that they have, that there is that on the table at this point.
Is this an opportunity then, I'm wondering, to when we say we're willing to do it until such and such a date, to also provide some information to them on the process for becoming part of the CVRD if they'd like to?
Well, we could do that. It is up to, so again, it can't be mandated. They're an improvement district. So it doesn't need, as far as I understand, and with past improvement districts, it hasn't needed like a referendum or a consent process for the customers of the system. But if their board resolves to convert over to the regional district, that's all it requires. Because the legislation actually is virtually identical between a regional district and an improvement district. And we're set up in the same way. So it's actually quite easy to do. But I could let them know. In fact, interestingly enough, their current administrator is Cheryl Weirs, who was a CVRD planner for quite a few years, and I do know her quite well, so I can always let her know if she's interested.
Okay, I see Ms. Mohan has popped up.
Thank you. Through the chair, to the committee, while I think that it's fairly standard that we get approached by different water systems to contemplate bringing them into the CVRD, we are currently very stretched at capacity to be able to do the work to incorporate systems. And so I think that rather than invite them in, we would deal with them on a request basis as they occur naturally.
Okay, thank you. Director Nicholson?
Well, that's interesting, because my understanding was when we did the Inova report and so forth, that having water improvement districts is actually a problem, and that it would give us a greater economy of scale if we could actually bring them all under one umbrella. So I get we have capacity issues, everyone does.
Yeah, and I have Director Morrison.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'll certainly support this this resolution, but I think there's broader implications at play. I think that there's an awful lot of improvement districts throughout the province that are struggling under the weight of the regulations, and of course there's a few that are big and have lots of customers that are doing just fine, but seems there's a lot more that are struggling, and one of the great things in the Inova report was I think it was almost cheekily suggesting that we might be a service provider for some of our municipal partners because we do it so well here. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. So one more question, Director Martman.
Thank you, Sharon. Through Mr. Dennison. I guess I pause when I look at this because of the concern of a deadline, and that there's a hard deadline by the CVRD saying we cannot go beyond this. And can you foresee? I can foresee this coming back up in before the end of June, saying, hey, we can't do this, and we can't do anything else, and you have to help us out because you're already doing this for us. Like, how do you write a contract, or how are you going to prepare for that? Because I can see that being a real potential in today's climate and trying to get things in place, under their own processes.
Yeah, so that's a very good question, and it could be quite awkward at that point in time, especially if we've got another summer of drought, and issues are, it's pretty intense. I think that likely, so they are pursuing very actively and very diligently. They are pursuing a new contract for that service, for an operator service. So we hope that plays out okay, and they can manage it. I think that another possibility, which would be less palatable to them, but you can have there's companies that will provide service at a pretty high premium. But that could be possible. I mean, if you pay enough, you can bring somebody in, and it may be much more than they would like to pay, and it may need increases in their rates or things of that nature in order to cover it. But they may be forced to go that way if it's necessary. It is actually, some years ago when we took over the Arbutus Register and Waters, Utilities, and Drainage, that came because they couldn't find operators, and they just couldn't keep anybody, and so they turned to us because it was just becoming impossible, and it's like that. It's getting to be quite a challenge.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Boyson.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't really have much to add. I just wanted to make a comment that because the RFP for they're getting their operator is April 1st, I think, we'll be looking to hear from them how that process is going, so that if we try to anticipate that time that could come, and we're thinking about that if the reality is that they're going to come to us at
down the road. We want to be anticipating that as early as possible. So we'll be staying in touch with them in the as part of that process to confirm in April if we think that this could be coming down the road. We'd want to be getting, if this request could be coming to us, we want to be jumping on and trying to answer all the questions and looking into resourcing and all those types of questions that we need to get answered well in advance. So we'll be looking to that, keeping tabs on everything in April.
Great. Okay. So we had a thorough discussion. It's been moved and seconded. I'd like to call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much. Ms. Harrison, next item, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The next item is item R7. It's a report from the Planning Strategic Initiatives Division regarding bylaw number 4360, Electoral Area B, Shawnigan Lake, zoning amendment bylaw regarding high water mark and height. And there is a 2-point recommendation. Would you like me to read it?
Yes, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The recommendation before you is that it be recommended to the board that CVRD bylaw number 4360, Electoral Area B, Shawnigan Lake, zoning amendment bylaw 2022, high water mark and height be forwarded to the board for consideration of first and second reading. And number 2, that a public hearing be scheduled for CVRD bylaw number 4360, Electoral Area B, Shawnigan Lake, zoning amendment bylaw 2022, with the directors from electoral areas B, A, and F as delegates.
Okay, thank you. And welcome, Ms. Breen.
Thank you. May I give a short presentation?
Yeah, please. I think that would be good.
Thank you, through the chair. So today we are presenting draft bylaw 4360, which is a bylaw that would, if adopted, amend 3 of the definitions in the Shawnigan Lake zoning bylaw. This is coming to you on the heels of bylaw 4348, the flood management bylaw for Shawnigan Lake, being adopted by the board on March 9th. The proposed definition changes are to height, high water mark, and setback from a water course. I'm going to give just a high-level overview of what the proposed changes are. The current zoning bylaw for Shawnigan Lake does not consider a flood construction level, which the Shawnigan Lake now has through the adoption of bylaw 4348. The proposed amendment considers wording that considers a flood construction level and permits the height to be measured from a lower flood construction level if identified by a professional engineer, and if the board has granted an exemption to allow that lower flood construction level. The second proposed amendment is to the definition of high water mark, which is adding something to the current definition that is in the bylaw. And it does add that, and this will avoid costs for the landowners because we're identifying what that high water mark would be so that owners don't have to get their lots surveyed. And we are suggesting that in the case of Shawnigan Lake, those points on the shoreline of the lake that are at an elevation of 116.5 meters, reference to the Geodetic Survey of Canada datum. That's the second amendment, proposed amendment. And the third one is setback from a water course, which in the current bylaw has a setback from a dwelling, and the proposal is to change that to a building or structure so that it encompasses more than just dwellings. And it ensures that then all buildings or structures are set back unless exempted. The recommendations were just read to you, so I won't read them again, but essentially it's for first and second reading and also to recommend to go to public hearing. And that's the overview for bylaw 4360.
We can't hear you.
Sorry.
Oh, you couldn't hear me for the whole thing?
No, I hear you. Just Director, Chair Salmon, we couldn't hear him, but I just
Yeah,
wanted
sorry.
to move the
Oh, okay.
recommendation.
Okay. Moved, seconded. Good, okay. Director Smith, did I see your hand earlier? No? Okay. Any other comments? Seeing none, I'd like to call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much. Okay, on now, Sarah, the next item, please.
Thank you, Chair Salmon. The next item is item R8, which is a report from the Planning Strategic Initiatives Division regarding Advisory Planning Commission bylaw number 4408 and bylaw number 4373 referrals referred from the February 23rd, 2022 board meeting. And there are two recommendations before you. Would you like me to read them?
Yes, please.
Number one, that it be recommended to the board that CVRD bylaw number 4408, Advisory Planning Commission Establishment bylaw 2022, be forwarded to the board for consideration of first three readings and adoption. And number two, that it would be recommended to the board that CVRD bylaw number 4373, Official Community Plan for the Electoral Areas 2022, be referred to the Electoral Area Advisory Planning Commission.
Thank you. So I think we have you on deck again, Ms. Breen.
Yes, thank you. Through the chair, may I give another presentation, please?
Yes, please.
Okay, thank you. So this afternoon, staff are returning to clarify some questions through referral on bylaw 44.8, which is the proposed amending bylaw or replacement bylaw actually for 3544 APCs. So the purpose is to provide those clarifications and also to seek a referral on draft bylaw, the MOCP, bylaw 4373 OCP, for the electoral areas to the APCs. The clarifying specifically, the resolution was to address the South End Joint Advisory Planning Commission, the types of referrals to be sent to the APCs, and the scope of the regional APC as proposed. So I'm going to go through the amendments specifically. In bylaw 4408, section 4 is the regional APC. Staff have added these underlined words that if the board makes appointments to the regional APC, it must appoint at least one member, whereas before it said two, from each of the electoral area APCs, and must appoint the same number of members from each of the electoral area APCs. So, in other words, if the committee decided it was going to be at one time one per electoral APC, then it would be one per electoral APC unless changed through a vote. The second addition to section 4 of bylaw 4408 was just the clarity that, and we've added these words, for certainty, there is nothing in this bylaw that obliges the board to make appointments to a regional APC. The third change is to section 5, and this is amended. And again, for clarity, that the general manager may refer matters respecting land use, community planning, or proposed. So the underlined words are added, official community plan bylaws, and the words that are strike through have been deleted to the regional APC in order that it may advise the board on those matters. The next change is also to section 5, referrals. amended. The words that are underlined have been added. The strike-throughs have been amended. The board may refer a matter described in section 5.1 or 5.3 to one or more electoral area APCs or the regional APC if the general manager has not done so and the board wishes to have the advice of the APC or APCs on the matter. So this provides clarity that those referrals can happen from the directors. Also to 5.0 referrals, we've added clarification that the general manager will notify the directors for the electoral area when a referral is made to the electoral area's APCs. Also added all of the underlined words. The APC to which a matter is referred shall provide its recommendation within 40 days of the date of referral, unless a longer period of time is specified in the referral, in which case the recommendation must be provided within that specified time. So it provides some certainty and some flexibility concurrently. Also added to 5.0 referrals is the clarification that, and this responds to the questions for clarification on joint committee referrals in the matter that in the event that a matter is referred to one or more electoral area APCs, the APCs shall convene a joint meeting to consider the matter and provide a recommendation, and part 6 of this bylaw, which is procedures, shall apply to the meeting, except that the APC meeters shall together elect from the members present for the purpose of that meeting only, a chairperson, a secretary, unless a CBRD staff person has been assigned to this role. For clarity, this means that should electoral areas A, B, and C wish to continue to meet collectively, they can, but it has to be specifically referred. So in summary, the general overview of changes is that referrals can be made to one or more electoral area APCs and they would meet collectively. The referrals to the regional APC are for matters of significance such as an OCP. There's nothing that obliges the board to make appointments to the regional APCs if established, and also that the general manager will notify electoral area directors of a referral. The recommendations today is to advance bylaw 4408 to the board for first, second, and third reading, and also that the OCP for the electoral areas draft bylaw 4373, otherwise known as the MOCP, be referred to the electoral area APCs.
Great, thank you very much. I have Directors Nicholson, Smith, and Morrison. Director Nicholson.
Thank you. This is ever so much clearer. And I super value the advice of the APC, so I'm really keen on getting this right. I think one of the things that remains a problem now that it's clear to me is that the directors will be notified when a referral is made. But I would like to be notified before a referral is made. I would like to be included in the conversation about what kind of a referral is appropriate. And a very good example came today. We had a property, an application for the Mines Road property, which is right on the border of Area E and B. And the Area B, I think actually the joint APC for A, B, and C reviewed the application. There was no one from our neighborhood there. They recommended approval without any of the understanding of the local area. And so that is something that I don't think was very helpful. And I think that we could, from the perspective of being efficient, we could probably not waste time by having things like that happen and then a director say, well, actually the other APC should be looking at it and so forth. So I would like the language changed to somehow bring us in before there is a referral made, number one. And then I have another question about the minute stuff, but I'll leave it at that for now.
Okay, thank you. So, Ms. Breen, did you have any comments right off on that one, or?
Thank you through the chair. I can look at some amending language for clarity on that.
Okay.
Yeah. On the timing of the referral or the timing of the notification.
Okay, good. I'll have to come back to Director Nicholson. She looks like she's occupied there for a moment. Dr. Nicholson, did you have a follow-up? Ms. Breen, while you were said she would have to check into your first question there.
Okay, and then so my other question was about the secretarial duties, because we had a conversation with Ms. Cheryl, I think, who said that staff would be available to help with secretarial duties, and that wasn't our experience at our last APC meeting. Staff were present but not willing to help with secretarial stuff. I guess my feeling about minutes is that it is really easy to jot down who's present and who's absent and whether the recommendation is to approve or deny. But actually for the APC advice to be helpful, I find it's useful if there's a few bullet points that say the things that were either contributing to their recommendation. And it's sometimes when you're participating in the conversation, it's hard to keep track of those points. So it's helpful if staff are there to just jot those down. So I was really hoping Ms. Cheroff would be able to explain what she was thinking when she said staff would be there to support minute taking.
Okay.
Thanks through the chair. My understanding with the adoption of 4408 is that staff would be there to take the minutes. That's the intention of the bylaw, 4408.
Okay, good. Thank you. So Director Smith.
Thank you. I am sort of wanting to go backwards to go forwards. When the development services evaluation was done, it came out that there was going to be when applications came in and the letter went out to the directors to indicate there had been an application, there was going to be follow-up from staff to the director of the area to let them know exactly what the application was for, whether it was for a 6-inch variance or what. But we still are not receiving that, and I think we have brought it forward multiple times during the meetings to ask, where's that gap happening? Because then how do we as a director know we should refer it to the APC? And I'm still wondering when we're going to get around to that. And then the other question would be, is the APC referrals, is it going to have to come to committee first for us to refer it to the APC, or can a director request that it go to the APC? So maybe I could have some clarification on those two items. Thank you.
Through the chair, I think Ms. Cheroff will have to respond to the first one, but I do believe the intention is to provide that more specific notification. And the second part was, sorry, you're going to have to repeat that second part for me. I normally don't forget that. Just the tail end, and I've got
That's
it again.
okay. Now you make me almost want to forget. Okay, so the question is, the clarification I'm looking for is it going to come to the committee something that, say, is in area G, and it would have to wait to get to committee to be referred to the APC? Or is staff going to refer it, or me as the director of the area going to refer it before it gets to committee? Because that's something that we seem to be finding is a little bit time-wise in that area. Thank you.
Through the chair, currently it's your prerogative to refer a matter without coming to committee, and I've personally experienced that I've had directors refer matters to me, and we've gone out to the APCs. So that's your current prerogative. Would be your prerogative under 4408? And alternatively, it can come through committee and it could go through the general manager as well. So it can come three ways the referrals could come. So today I'm asking for a formal referral of bylaw 4373 to all APCs, but it could have independently, should a director have wished a certain matter as a draft to be considered by the committee, it could have been referred. Does that help?
Yeah. Okay, good, thank you. Director Morrison.
I'm not sure that helped clarify for me at all. So I thought part of this exercise was to create a relatively formal system for a almost an automated referral for the appropriate applications that come in, that all staff know what the policies and the rules are. We're notified. But there seems to be this inclination to then step into a staff and director discussing the merits of whether or not an application is then referred to an APC, when I thought sort of the general intent of this was to establish set systems that would basically take care of that as our normal course of business. So I'm hearing that no, directors will be notified and then have discussions with staff about the merits of a particular application being referred to their APC. So that was my first point, and another point as well.
I'm through the chair. So the bylaw is more general. It could be that an accompanying policy could be written on the specifics of it, but the referrals to the commissions may refer, so the board or a director may refer matters respecting land use, community planning, or proposed bylaws and permits. So may, not shall. And the second one under referrals is that the board or the area or the director may refer matters to a joint advisory planning commission or composed of, or actually, sorry, let me just, I'm just going to go back to clarify here. Okay, I'm in the right bylaw. 4408, I was in 3544. So the general, here's the clarifying language. The general manager can refer matters. Number one. The general manager shall notify the director for the electoral area when a referral is made to an electoral area ABC. The general manager may refer matters respecting land use, community planning, or proposed official community plan. So it's all may, they're not specific. The board may refer a matter. So it's saying the general manager or the directors or the board. A director may refer a matter described in section 5.1 to the APC for the director's electoral area if the general manager hasn't done so. Number 6, the APC to which a matter is referred shall provide its recommendation within 40 days. So that's the time constraint. So it is saying a general manager, the directors, or the board. That's the current bylaw. And we can make changes to that bylaw, but right now those are the provisions that are set out.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. I think there's a gap in there, but I'll go to my second question. I see an inconsistency in the resolution that was put up on the board, and I just would perhaps some clarification. We don't have a lot of bylaws that we can do 3 reading and adoption in the same meeting, and some qualify for that and some don't. The resolution that was provided by Ms. Breen just had the 3 readings, yet the resolution in the package has indication for 4408 of 3 readings and adoption. So
through the chair, yes, I can explain that. That was changed on request and adoption very recently because 4379, the procedures bylaw is going to the board, and the hope was that they could be adopted at the same meeting because this bylaw is a step behind. That was the recommendation in the package is correct.
So perhaps clarification from Ms. Harrison, because I think there's only certain bylaws that have that we have the capacity to do 3 readings and adoption in a meeting. Are these qualifying bylaws?
Ms. Harrison.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Director Morrison. Any type of bylaw considered a regulatory bylaw, not containing any level of approval, be it elector, director, or inspector, can be granted 3 readings and adoption at the same meeting.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Any further questions? I think, did I see Director Nicholson first and then Director Smith?
I'm sorry to belabor this, but I think this is what Director Smith is concerned about, as I am. It is the way the bylaw is laid out. Directors may refer it, which is great, but we can't refer it if we don't have the information about the application actually existing in a timely way. So that is the thing that I'm struggling with. How is that going to happen? And maybe it doesn't need to be addressed in the bylaw, but
okay.
Through the chair, we can, staff suggestion is a policy to accompany us to provide that clarification.
So do staff need direction in terms of a motion that happens, that's developed, or?
Yes, thank you. Just direction to do it.
Okay. So under advisement.
Okay, good. That's under advisement, I think. Director Smith.
Okay. Thank you. I just want to go back to the referral, because so it's the GM, manager, the director, or the board. But what about the committee? Is committee and board the same, or?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
And I'm confused why we need a policy, because in the past we've been promised multiple times that we were going to start to be receiving more detail so that we could just refer it to our APC. We weren't having a discussion with staff. We're just trying to make a decision. If it's a 6-inch change, then maybe it doesn't need to be referred to your APC. But if it's like a 10-foot change, it's maybe something that should be referred to your APC. And this goes back a couple of years now. So we keep just dragging it along. And if we'd known a couple of years ago we needed a policy, I guess we would have created a policy. So this is really good information. I think that, Allison and I seem to be continuing down this road to try and get clarification on how we can actually make this happen. So if it's a policy, then that's great. Thank you.
Good. Okay. And Ms. Breen has agreed to look into the policy, correct? Yes, good. Okay, seeing no further questions, I need a mover for this recommendation. Moved and seconded. That was 2 parts. Okay, seeing no further question, I'd like to call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Okay, thank you. So, Ms. Saracen, next item, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The next item is question period, and we do have one applicant. We're just waiting for Ms. Kaufman to log on.
Okay. She must be in area E.
Just a test. Can you guys hear me now?
Yes, very well.
Good, good. I think I finally fixed it.
I'm good.
Did you find out which button to press?
I never know which buttons to press.
You do manage to press some.
Are we going into a different meeting for the next close thing?
Yeah, I believe so.
Susan Kaufman just texted me and she says she has not received the invite.
Oh, okay. Go ahead, Ms. Harrison.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, I have sent the invite, another WebEx invite. It's to the same meeting. I can send her another one, or if Director Nicholson would be so kind as to text her back and ask her to sign on with the same link, that would assist.
Okay, thank you. Anyone know any jokes? Close. You better not speak, actually, you'll probably go off.
I got a couple, but I'm not sure if we can do them while we're streaming live here.
Okay, well, she says it's not working, so.
Okay, well, maybe we'll have to tell Ms. Kaufman if she can try again next time, we'll answer. We can come back to her question for this time too. Okay, so Ms. Harrison, shall we move to the next item, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The next item would be a motion to go into closed session in accordance with subsection 1F and 1G.
Okay, would someone like to move that? Moved, seconded, all in favor? Opposed, motion carries. Thank you. So that is a new link then, is it, Ms. Harrison?
That is correct,
Okay.
Mr. Chair.
So we'll take a short break. Let's do we'll do a 10-minute break. We'll see you at 5:12, please.